So, by way, let me give a personal testimony. I think it's appropriate. And my dear wife and all that on Thursday night, when all that pandemonium, when all that started going down, Thursday evening, and I had a chance finally to call Bob, and Jan put out the email at 8. I checked all this morning. The email went out at 8:30. Kim needs prayer. Flash, bulletin, Christ Community Presbyterian Church. Kim Richert, an ICU. To your posts. At 9:17, she texts me and saying, I'm off the vent. Now, before I left the hospital, I said, well, we'll try at 5. We'll try at 5 a.m. We'll let you know. Just go. 8:30, the message goes out. To your post, Christians. Do your work. 9:17, she is up, texting me. I'm off the vent. Call me. Does anybody doubt just from that power of prayer? Why would we not pray daily, often, about the word is not necessarily trivial, but other things in our life? That this meeting would go well, that this thing I'm doing would go well, or that I'd get better and I'd get healed. Why would we not? Just knowing. Right there's an example of the power of prayer. All right? 34th Psalm. I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be in my mouth. My soul makes its boast in the Lord. Let the humble hear and be glad. Oh, magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt his name together. I sought the Lord, and he answered me, and delivered me from all my fears. Those who look to him are radiant, and their faces shall never be ashamed. This poor man cried, and the Lord heard him, and saved him out of all his troubles. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear him, and delivers them. Amen? Amen. So there. It encourages me. Sometimes I get to the end of the day. A lot of times I get to the end of the day, or even the next morning. Why didn't I pray more often yesterday? We've all got our little routines for prayer and Bible study, but it doesn't, and it shouldn't be just, well, I did it, and I put my heart into it. I did it by faith. It's all good. We should do it more often. I really, once and yet again, got reminded to, who said, well, I do know. We should continually be in prayer. We should have a prayerful attitude.
1 Thessalonians 5.
Right. I couldn't remember the verse. Thank you. But that's the verse that came in. And that's the exhortation. So, without further ado, this subject today is much lighter than the one last week. I appreciate everybody's patience with last week, and I thought it was a good lesson for Saul as we look out in the world and look to take care of our neighbor, just to have that background and understanding of the topic of suicide. This lesson today, number 12, is a bit of a review as we are in the home stretch of this series. We learned early on, like back in the first or second lesson, that the body, we, people, human, mankind, are body and soul. We experience the world as body and soul. And we should, for that reason right there, as Christians, we should consider depression to be a spiritual issue. our meaning in life, our purpose in life, all these existential questions we wrestle with, our mood, our relationships, faith, everything is called into question, is challenged when we become depressed. The soul becomes tormented. And on top of that, there's the physical manifestations. Lethargy, appetite increases or decreases, weight loss, those sort of things. Sleep is affected. There's all manner of physical ailments that can arise out of depression. And the body, or the soul rather, is in torment. As Christians, we would say, in dealing with depression, we would say the way to address depression is as a spiritual problem. And if we address the spiritual problem, the spiritual side of the equation, the spiritual side of it, then the mood being low, the negative thinking, and the body will follow along as the spiritual side of our life picks back up as we address it. Psalm 42, verse 5. I left out all my scripture references on the outline. I don't know how I did that. Yet again, Psalm 42, verse 5. Just a little reference to depression there, and someone would read that. Go ahead.
Why are you cast down, O my soul, and why are you in turmoil within me? Hope in God, for I shall again praise Him, my salvation.
Thank you. So we can just see there, address the spiritual side of the equation, and the mood, the body, the negative thinking will follow along with it. Now, that unfortunately is not how modern therapy addresses the problem. Modern therapy replaces the spiritual with the cognitive. Fix the thinking, and the emotions and the body will follow along. Not even going to consider the spiritual. The people who, the two folks that pioneered, is that the word, or developed the intervention of cognitive behavioral therapy, I know one is definitely an atheist, and the other, I couldn't find any evidence that they believed anything spiritual. No, they're a whole other bucket of worms. Aaron Beck, and Albert Ellis. And back in the 50s, they developed cognitive behavioral therapy. It's got good ideas, and you can take some of that and use it, but it totally ignores the idea that depression is a spiritual issue. It goes at the negative thinking. Identify the CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, identify the unhelpful thought, the negative self-talk, I'm a loser, I'll never accomplish this, I'm a big loser, so I shouldn't attempt this new job. I'll just fade in the background. Address that, develop a new thinking pattern to address the negative self-talk, and then the mood will follow the thought. Okay. I got a lot of studies that say that work. I've seen it work. It is effective, is as effective as medicine. Maybe more effective for mild and moderate depression than any pill. Christian counseling, biblical counseling, addresses negative self-talk also. Because I am doomed. There's all manner of negative self-talk that the Christian can employ to justify or to tell themselves about what's in the world that's going on around them. So we do the same thing, and we touched on that a couple of times in our discussions in here that Christians use negative self-talk. We talk ourselves down. But we got to address it from the spiritual side. We got to, what did we say several lessons ago? We've got to look into our heart and see what is it in our heart that needs to be discovered. Or what happened outside of us that affected us. How did it affect us spiritually? Without making it all about us. I think there's something spiritual going on with depression. There's certainly negative self-talk. And we can use, it's good to address that. And I think what I want to get back to, though, is that therapy ignores the spiritual side of the equation. That's where I want to land. Good? Have I confused anybody? Lost? Good? Good. Psalm 78:35. To go back to address therapy and thinking, because the whole idea of negative self-talk is important. What the messages we're sending ourselves. 78:35. Psalm 78:35.
They remember that God was their rock, the Most High God, their redeemer.
They remember. Instead of believing the negative self-talk, I'm doomed, or God's forgotten me, or this will never work, they remembered that God is their God and addressed it. So, there. I think everybody. Physicians, psychiatrists in particular, address the problem of depression from a physical angle. It's for the doctor, as you can imagine, he's concerned about, they consider depression to be a chemical imbalance that they can address. Sure, they'll refer folks to therapists, but their first concern, their only concern is to address the physical angle. And the thinking along with that is fix the brain, and the emotions, the thinking, and the body will follow along. And we do live in a culture that focuses on the physical body. Instagram wouldn't exist. We focus on the physical body. We focus on how we feel all the time. We focus, me, my back hurts. That wasn't cool. That wasn't cool. I'm sorry.
My foot hurts.
My foot hurts. My head hurts. I got a headache. I got to take something right now. I need an antibiotic. We just focus on the body all the time. That really was bad.
Because he'll say, did you take your medicine?
That's right. So, our culture even teaches us, we've been hearing this since March, our culture teaches us to value science to the point it becomes an idol. We become idolatrous going on. The science, I must heed what the science tells me to do. Take this pill and be happy. Rub this cream in and you'll have better skin. Use this shampoo, you'll have better hair. Certainly, taking advantage of medical science is wise. And medical science is evidence of the grace God bestows upon mankind. We are very fortunate to live in the time we live in. Science is, we've learned a lot. We've got air conditioning. Baseballs go farther. There's a lot to be said about how helpful modern science has been for us, but sometimes we take it too far. We should remember to hold all thoughts captive to Christ. I want to put a caveat here, because I'm not anti-med, and we're going to go through the medicines that doctors commonly prescribe for depression. We're going to go through it. You are so welcome. Meds to treat depression, this is me talking, are appropriate when the individual is no longer able to do their daily, attend to the daily needs of living. They can't get out of bed. I mean, they won't get out of bed. Can't cook, won't cook, bathe, eat. When they become that bad or they become suicidal, anything to keep them alive until we can address the spiritual issue, I think is okay. So, that's me talking. So, physicians, I want to go over these different classes of drugs because you will run into them either yourself or through family or friends. And so I think we'll just talk about these a little bit. If you remember back to the second lesson, we talked about the role of serotonin in our brain. Right? Everybody remember talking about serotonin? You've heard it before. The more serotonin, the more your mood goes up. Better you're sleeping. More serotonin, the better. You've got in your brain, you've got all these neurotransmitters, they're sending them out, and then you've got receptors over here. So a little neurotransmitter over here, imagine 1 trillion of them or whatever the number is, there's plenty. It's sending out all these little serotonin molecules, I guess. It's sending them all out. The theory being, the hope being, that they get in there and they get pulled in on the other side of the receptor to go do what it does and tell another part of the brain, hey, everything's well. But unfortunately, sometimes one of these, or many of these, serotonin molecules goes back to where it came from. It gets reuptake, it's called. So it depletes the amount of serotonin available to make it over to the other side. Body's kind of sucking them back in. And then we'll go and complete the loop and tell the brain everything's fine. So, at some point, back in the 60s, they came up with selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors to keep this little backwards flow from ever happening. SSRIs. Very popular. Doctors hand them out quickly. If you go to your doctor, your family doctor, and say, I'm worried, sometimes I cry, I don't feel happy, I just can't get going in the morning or at night or whatever, he's probably, not 100% of the time, going to prescribe an SSRI which will put more serotonin out there to get picked up and improve your mood. Serotonin drugs, I think I put this on your list, maybe I didn't. Prozac, Zoloft, Paxil. Probably heard of those. Commercials on TV. Man, back in the 70s and 60s, they were so popular. Not that I remember any of that, but I've read about it. Stop it. They take them like candy all the time, particularly Prozac. It was a miracle drug, because it's, it can work. It's not that it gets you high, but it puts all this serotonin, allows all this serotonin to be out there, and mood goes up. So that's an SSRI. That's SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Then the doctors started working with stuff, and they came up with one called SNRIs, because there's this stuff called norepinephrine out there. Anybody heard of that? Bob, you know that one? Norepinephrine. Kind of picks you up, makes you a little more energetic. Not high. Norepinephrine interacts with this system in your body. One part of it gets you excited and reactive and go. let's deal with things. And the other part calms you down. Well, that's the parasympathetic nervous system. Imagine, if you would, you're too calm, you're too low, too regulated down, too low. This norepinephrine, if I understand it right, if there's more available, if it's not getting sucked back in there, more norepinephrine available, mood goes up. SNRIs, Cymbalta, Effexor, Prestige. We hear about that one all the time now. Fatzima, never heard of that one. Anybody hear those? Cymbalta, huh? On the TV? Cymbalta? Yeah. See it a lot. Yeah. And that's what it's doing. It's working with two different neurotransmitters, two serotonin and norepinephrine. Scientists doing what they do. This is an old school, and actually this is one of the older ones. Then there's NDRIs. It's norepinephrine dopamine reuptake inhibitor, because you got what we all like, dopamine floating around in here, right? And you got dopamine receptors all over the place, and they're wanting to suck up the dopamine, because when we get dopamine flowing, we feel really happy with ourselves. That's the reward. I did good. I want more chocolate cake because it makes me feel so good. More dopamine, the better. Sometimes, though, they get squirrely and go back the wrong way. This just inhibits that and makes sure there's plenty of dopamine available. And norepinephrine. It's working with norepinephrine and dopamine. One famous, I bet you've heard of it, Wellbutrin. Wellbutrin. Very widely used, few side effects. Let's see, what did I write it? Yeah, Wellbutrin. Few side effects, very popular. You might even get that one if you're a senior family physician. He may even start with Wellbutrin before he ever gets to Prozac or the others. He might try that one first. So that's an NDRI. Then you got these old school ones. These things called tetracyclines. Golly. I'm glad I only needed to know this stuff once. Tetracyclines, Remeron, I don't know if I say it right, Remeron. Yeah. It blocks neuroreceptors. So it's working totally different. Some of these are getting the flow to go. But this selectively, somehow or another, focuses on some receptors and blocks them so that serotonin and norepinephrine can be more abundant in that gap there. But there's tons of side effects with Remeron. I've never even heard of it. I'm sure there's probably people walking around taking it. But when I was doing the research for this class today, I just read that there's lots of side effects. SARIs, serotonin antagonist and reuptake inhibitor, just like the SSRIs, but the mechanism is different. It blocks some of these receptors so that more serotonin is abundant and available. Sleep, I guess, people become tired on these. Tricyclics, very old again. Elavil. Anybody heard of Elavil? I think it's bupropion. I don't know, kids say it right, but it's Elavil. Very old school. Doctors are liable to give that to you too because they trust it. But it has a lot of side effects. Tricyclics. So there's that. Elavil works similar as SNR, but it's blocking things on a whole grand level. It's It's like a shotgun blast. Got MAOIs. We're about done here with this section. MAOIs, very old school. Monoamine something. Monoamine oxidase inhibitors. All I knew about that is they have nasty side effects. Insomnia, digestive problems, muscle issues. You're liable to get something like these maybe in a hospital, I think is the way that would be. So there, the doctors have a whole plethora, that's the right word, plethora? They have a whole bunch of drugs to work from to address what's going on. And then each of these, particularly these up here, they've got tons and tons of different brand names, Paxil, Prozac, Effexor. They got tons and tons. And one doctor likes one over the other, and boom, they're writing you a script for a pill. Some other things doctors should tell you, may tell you: pay attention to food and nutrients rich in B vitamins, folate. Relationship between B vitamins seem to get the mood to upregulate a little bit. And then another treatment if the depression is unrelenting and very, very severe is TMS and ECT. Anybody hear those? Transcranial magnetic stimulation and electroconvulsive therapy. Anybody? Nobody?
Sounds serious.
Sounds serious.
ECT, is that what we call shock therapy in fact?
Yeah. The way a doctor was telling me, it is. This is passing, there's current going through. But it's not like, remember one flew over the cuckoo's nest?
I saw that. I don't go there.
I think it's a lot less dramatic. The whole idea is electric current through the brain to induce a seizure. Apparently that stimulates the brain somehow. That reverses the chemistry in these areas that are affected by the depression. 80% effective. What a doctor told me, though, is a lot of recidivism. It'll work for a while, and then they have to come back and get treated again.
Keep Nurse Ratchet away from it.
I'm telling you, man.
Yeah.
Making me want to watch the movie. Transcranial magnetic stimulation is magnetic pulses through the brain, do the same thing, stimulates areas of the brain that need to be upregulated. ECT, I guess, is more effective than TMS, but TMS is gentler and easier on the individual. When it comes to this science of all this stuff, if you really press the doctors and the scientists on it, they say they don't know why the meds work on some people and not on others. And I've heard stories, they'll give you Prozac and mood doesn't improve. All right, let's stop that, and here's Paxil. And then they get better. They don't know what happened. They just know if this one didn't work, try this one. And not real, I don't think that happens necessarily if you've got a cut on your finger and it looks a little wonky. They know exactly what they're going to do. So they don't know why some meds work on some people and not on others. And same line of thought, some people respond differently to one med and another person take the same med and not have any of the side effects. So people respond differently to meds. It works better on some. On some folks, some of these meds, they work kind of opposite. It increases the chance of suicide. So there's some data, correlation to suicide goes up. Some people get darker. It's difficult to measure this serotonin and norepinephrine in the brain to say, yes, verily can you have low serotonin. There are tests they can do, but they're very invasive. It's not like, get a little blood draw and they get in there, their microscope, there it is. You look. It's a very drawn out thing to to test and see what's going on. And did it work? I gave you Prozac. Did your serotonin level go up? We don't know. There's no test in the office where you can go do that. They just know it either we see a change or we don't see a change. These meds particularly these, will lose effectiveness over time, and you got to be switched to another one. And the point I think is important is they treat the symptom, they don't treat the underlying issues of what's going on. Because there's something happening. It's a spiritual issue. It's obvious to us. But even for folks who aren't Christian, who don't buy into what we believe, there's something underneath all that depression that needs to get worked out. Depression doesn't happen in a vacuum. So, yea, verily, a person can go get Prozac, Paxil, Effexor, Cymbalta, whatever, and begin to feel better. Go on for a year or so, feel better, I'm good, and never maybe come back and clean up what was going on. Then they get tired of taking the pill and go right back the other way. Nothing got worked out. Nothing got dealt with. If you consider medication, if you're considering medication or a loved one or a friend, here's some ideas to think about.
When you're on these for a longer period of time, do you reach a point where, not necessarily dependence, but if you were to clean up the spiritual side, can you go off of something like that?
Yes. Very good question. These are not narcotics where you've got a whole physical, classic withdrawal, fear of withdrawal, addiction going on. But you don't want to just stop taking them. Because this part, you're going to create a situation where serotonin is going to get taken out, and you kind of got to slowly ramp down to allow this process, this whole part to balance back out. Because if you just pull the carpet under it, you're going to, what happened?
Well, I'll tell you.
But it's not an addiction.
The only time that I think I ever really felt depressed is when my brother died.
Sure.
And I read something about St. John's wort, which I used for a period of time. It was actually effective, or at least maybe it was a placebo effect.
But it worked, whatever it was, right?
Whatever it was.
And I've heard the same thing.
Did you get any?
Yeah.
Did you get a wart?
Yeah, no, it was a lot more, St. John's wort was a lot more effective than St. Paul's Bunyan. And it's kind of in short supply anyway, so.
I'm going to go to... Wow. I just caught part of that.
Very bad.
All right. So here's some ideas and some things to consider. If you are going to consider that you need medication, or a loved one or a friend, here's some things to consider. I'm going to read a passage from Mark 5, 21 through 43, and if someone can have Luke 18, verse 27 ready. Mark 5, 21 through 43. And when Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a great crowd gathered around him, and he was beside the sea. Then came one of the rulers of the synagogue, Jairus by name, and seeing him, he fell at his feet and implored him earnestly, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come and lay your hands on her, so that she may be made well and live." And he went with them. And a great crowd followed him and thronged about him. And there was a woman who had a discharge of blood for 12 years, and who had suffered much under many physicians. Been to a lot of treatment. And had spent all that she had and was no better, but grew worse. She had heard the reports about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his garment. For she said, "If I touch even his garments, I will be made well." And immediately the flow of the blood dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. And Jesus, perceiving in himself that power had gone out of him, immediately turned about in the crowd and said, "Who touched my garments?" And his disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing around you, and yet you say, 'Who touched me?' And he looked around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed by your disease." While he was still speaking, there came from the ruler's house some who said, "Well, your daughter's dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" But overhearing what they said, Jesus said to the ruler of the synagogue, "Do not fear, only believe." And he allowed no one to follow him except Peter and James and John, the brother of James. And they came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue, and Jesus saw a commotion, people weeping, wailing loudly. And when he had entered, he said to them, "Why are you making a commotion and weeping? The child is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. But he put them all outside and took the child's father and mother and those who were with him and went inside where the child was. Taking her by the hand, he said to her, "Talitha cumi," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." And immediately the girl got up and began walking, for she was 12 years of age. And they were immediately overcome with amazement. And he strictly charged them that no one should know of this and told them to give her something to eat. And the next verse, Luke 18:27. You got that? Somebody quick? Luke 18:27. Luke 18:27. It's very familiar.
But he said, "What is impossible with men is possible with God."
Thank you. No one on this earth, prior to today or going forward, no one gets better from anything unless God ordains it. It is God who ordains the means of our healing. Even when we take medication, medication is grace. Medication is evidence of God's love for mankind. When we take it with the right point of view and take it by faith, the medication will not work if God has got other means that he's going to ordain. This woman had been seen by all those physicians for her hemorrhaging. And I'm sure they had tons of little treatments. Right? I mean, doctors have been around, or using herbs or whatever they were doing, and none of it worked. She never got better. In fact, she grew worse until she touched the garment that Jesus was wearing. And her faith made her well. In her case. It is God, so we should always remember that when we're considering medication. It is always God who ordains the means of our healing. If you are taking a medication, and we've covered this, and if you're taking a medication such as these, and you're thinking, I've had enough. I want to stop. For whatever reason, I want to stop. Discuss it with your physician first. Though none of these are addictive, like when we think about with narcotics, you just don't want to pull the rug out from under it. You want to follow your doctor's advice and taper off. If it doesn't take long, from what I understand, maybe a week, you just want to give a chance for your brain to catch up to what you're doing. If you are taking medications, or your friend or your loved one, if you're taking medications, a lot of these don't start working for a little while. It takes about a month, 6 weeks, most of them. If you're taking medications, and after they've laid in and they should be working, ask yourself, are you getting better or are you getting worse? You shouldn't get worse. If you got worse, it's the wrong med. Going back to the doctor needs to figure out a different one, different molecule. If you're getting better, good. If you're not getting better, just discuss it with your physician. I would tell you, if there's a legitimate, valid reason to take this medicine and it's not working, don't just give up. Go see your doctor. Hey, this one's not working like we talked about. All right? A lot of us go see our family physician to address depression or anxiety. We could roll. Anxiety has got a lot of these same things going on with it. Anxiety, big mood swings. We'll go see our family physician, and many of them will go ahead and write you a prescription for these things. But they really, they just wrote a book. they don't have a lot of experience in it. They got a lot of broad experience. My advice would be go see a psychiatrist, because they are trained, they know all about these meds. That was their focus in med school. They've done so many clinicals and so many hospitals. They know all about those meds. And they know not all depressions created equally, and they'll listen to you very briefly, and then they will prescribe you something. I would tell you go see a psychiatrist. I'm not saying don't trust your doctor. I'm just saying psychiatrists are better at psych meds. If you haven't started medications before, I tell you, consider biblical counseling to address the spiritual side, address the spiritual before you go down the path of the medication. I said before, unless you're just unable to attend to daily living needs or suicidal, I would urge you, go see one of your elders, go see the pastor, go see a counselor trained in biblical counseling, and address the spiritual before you go far. Oh, I wouldn't. Don't discount the effect of regular exercise, a good healthy diet, and sleep. Unless you're getting too much sleep. But always consider the sleep side of the equation. Those three things, plus setting some goals and activities to do every day, work really well with depression. Diet, exercise, sleep, daily goals are things you can accomplish so that you can gain a sense of achievement. Dopamine goes up, serotonin will fall. And these aren't work-related goals. I want to kick that in. I always do things that give you pleasure. I'm going to go out and walk the dog. I'm going to go work in the garden. I'm going to go do whatever it is, but it gives you pleasure. And get out and do that every day. And then if that's not working on your mood, counseling, go address the other things. Finally, and the first thing you should always do, if you feel like, man, I am low. Something is wrong with me. I can't get out of bed. I'm crying all the time. All my thinking is messed up. Go see your doctor first and have a physical exam. Could be other things going on. There's a whole host of physical diseases, maladies, and sicknesses that, if not treated, kind of mess with this whole biological thing God gave us, and you get depressed. I'm thinking of getting chemo. That messes with your body, and you don't feel well every morning. The radiation, constant pain. There's a whole host of things that if you're sick or dealing with them can cause depression. Go see your doctor. You can tell him, I don't want any of this, but what's going on with me? Is there some underlying issue that we should be addressing that first? All right, that was a lot of science. Any parting shots, comments?
I find it interesting, Rick. Every time I go to my annual physical with my doctor, they have me fill out this 2 or 3 page survey.
It's the Medicare survey. They only get it if you're a certain age. They gave it to you last time by mistake.
Anyway, they ask you in about 18 different ways to try to make you say that you feel depressed. And it's just like, I'm thinking, what are they pushing the drugs on us or what? And just really,
they might be.
I find it very offensive that they keep, they ask me one way and then, you feel a little blue today, and then it's like, are you sure you don't feel blue? And it's like,
I'm great.
Yeah.
And a lot of the TV ads, they they spend less time telling you what the drug is for. They say, ask your doctor if this is right for you.
They're powerful meds. There's a place for them, I believe. And I don't know why. My doctor does the same thing. Every time I go in there,
Sorry.
a PH9, I think it's called PHQ9 or something. It's just a standard health form. They're trying to sniff out depression. I'm glad to do it because they might catch somebody who's